Hey guys, Pro1701, and today we are finishing up our ranking of the Skywalker Saga with number one, the best movie in the Skywalker Saga, in my opinion. You know what, let me rephrase that. I should say my favorite movie in the Skywalker Saga, because there's a difference between best and favorite, as I explained in my last video. And if you've been keeping up, you know that number one is actually a prequel movie. And I know what some of you are thinking. It's treason then. Helping me out today is my saber forged Talon, an excellent Sith saber. In the deep red blade color. I'm very fond of this hilt. It is a thin neck. I have a strong love for thin neck. Just like my fellow reviewer, Sidious Sabers. He's also a big fan of thin necks. And yes, it has the weather design, which I like. And I just wanted to give it a little bit of love, because I do think we need to feature a red blade when we are talking about none other than Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I love Revenge of the Sith. I do. It is a fantastic movie. There's always a lot going on in this movie without it feeling crammed in like, say, Rise of Skywalker, where Rise of Skywalker feels bloated and it's struggling with everything it has to juggle, where it feels like two movies crammed together. Rise of Skywalker is actually paced pretty well for the most part. And it's the only Star Wars movie that I don't have to fast forward through anything. Like, I never have to hit the fast forward button with Revenge of the Sith. It's the only one. And it juggles everything it has to do well. It's like a juggler. It's sitting there going, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this. Is it a perfect movie? No. It has flaws. Let's get one of them out of the way right now. The turn is way too fast. What have I done? You're right. I have to kill all the younglings. That takes, about a 15-second period. You know, that whole turn to Vader is like that. You know, it's like that. It's like Emilia Clarke's character in Game of Thrones. Yeah. You know, that's not done well. That is the one burning flaw in this movie. Dialogue is still a little hokey, like most of the prequels are, but not as bad. Not as bad. Although there's still some there. Remember on Naboo, where there was just our love? And Natalie Portman's a great actress, but nobody can do that dialogue. Not well. But the turn is the biggest flaw there. It happens way too quickly. But again, this movie has so much it has to do. And that's not its fault. Some of this stuff should have been set up in earlier movies. Like a lot of people think Episode 1 didn't need to happen. Episode 2 needed to be Episode 1. And then Episode 2 could have been basically the first half of Episode 3. And then Episode 3 could have been the second half of Episode 3, or even just a little bit of Vader right as he turns. As it is, this movie, since it's the last one in the trilogy, has a lot it has to get done. And considering everything it has to do and the amount of time it has to do it in, it pulls it off really well. First off, the opening scene right after the credits scroll through is the best opening scene in Star Wars. When it pans down and you just see that battle, that whole camera shot, and that CGI holds up really well. You know, CGI is weird. Some CGI holds up well, some CGI does not hold up well. But that opening shot of the space battle is magnificent. It's my favorite opening shot of any Star Wars movie, and I will argue it's the best opening shot of any Star Wars movie. That just looks phenomenal. The whole banter with Anakin and Obi-Wan as they're boarding the ship, and you see, Anakin saving his life. In these early scenes with them, we still get that rapport that Anakin and Obi-Wan have, that they're very close friends. They still kind of have that mentor and apprentice vibe, but that they're a little more closer now, and that they're also good friends, trust each other with their lives, have no problems leaving their back exposed to the other person. We see that just like when Anakin refuses to leave Obi-Wan, his fate will be the same as ours. These two care very deeply for each other. All of the actors here, let me point out, are on the ball per usual. Hayden Christensen's doing great as Anakin, in my opinion. Ewan McGregor's always great as Obi-Wan. Natalie Portman's great. Yoda's looking awesome. Frank Oz is voicing him well. The CGI on him is done well. Ian McDiarmid's great. Everybody does good. There's no bad actors here. That whole opening part when they're on the ship crashing is, again, it's almost like its own little mini movie. And that's done really well. I like that part at the end. Another happy landing. That's amusing to me. And we get to see Anakin's piloting skills, because we know Anakin is an excellent pilot, as it mentions in the original trilogy. So it's nice to see that kind of being shown again here. I find Grievous interesting. I like having Count Dooku in the movie. He's not in it a lot, but one, we get more Christopher Lee. We get to see kind of Christopher Lee's arrogance, because he's like, I've been looking forward to this. You know, he's sure he can win. He's overconfident. And he also serves a good plot point in the movie, because, Sidious has set all this up to tempt Anakin, to try to slowly drive him a little more toward the dark side. Because when they say being seduced by the dark side, that's exactly what it is. It's a seduction. It's a slow process. At least it's supposed to be. That's, again, why that turn was a little too fast. But, Sidious has been setting this up little by little since he was a boy, slowly inching him that way. That's why it's called a seduction, because that's what it is. It's a slow seduction process. And this is another step in it. And it's interesting because I love this scene because it very much mirrors the scene in episode 6 with Luke and Vader, when, the Emperor's kind of set this up because he wants to see if he can get Luke to kill Vader, to take Vader's place, since Vader's not the Sith he was before the suit. I'm sure it was, Palpatine was stinged about him having to be in the suit. But whereas in Luke managed not to give in to his dark urges and didn't go toward the dark side, here we see that same thing play out, but Anakin gives in to his urges, even only for a second, and kills Dooku, which, kind of gives, Palpatine that, I can get him. Now Anakin regrets it instantly, but he still failed to, spare Dooku. So I like how those two scenes mirror each other, but play out so differently. That's neat to me. It's also, I enjoy that fight scene right there. It's short, but I think it's well choreographed. I do like some of the humor in the movie, like I expected someone older. General Grievous. You're shorter than I expected, or something like that. I like the little humor bits in this. The CGI is much better in this one. I think the cameras they used for this one were a next generation of the cameras used from episode 2. They were newer models. And so the CGI has aged better. The backgrounds don't look quite as bland. I really like the scene where I'm saying the Pimperer again. Apparently that's in my mind, the Pimperer. When Palpatine is having that conversation with Anakin in the opera or whatever that is, when he's talking about Darth Plagueis. That's a really well done scene. The music there is scored and it's really moody, and you can tell that's another seduction scene where he's slowly luring him in. And Ian McDiarmid is just amazing in that scene. He is great. He plays that perfectly. Because we see that kind of malice in his face sometimes. It was ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself. And he has that little bit of a smile. Is it possible to learn his power? Not from a Jedi. Ian is just great in that scene. He makes that scene. And the music John uses there is really good for that scene, too. I think that's one of the best scenes in the movie. Really sells what's going on. I like the fact that the Emperor is able to manipulate it to where he knows Yoda is going to be off planet and he knows Obi-Wan is going to be off planet. That way, when Anakin is at that tipping point, Anakin doesn't have the two people he would go to for help. Because, if Obi-Wan or Yoda had been there, I think he would have went to them in his crisis when he was so conflicted. Instead of just going after Mace and the other Jedi to kind of see what was going on, I think he would have come to them. But since Palpatine kind of made sure they were off planet, it left Anakin unbalanced enough he had nobody to turn to. And that's really good maneuvering. And that whole scene, right at the beginning, when the Jedi first confront him, and, talks about that, you're here sooner than expected, you're under arrest. And the Senate not yet is treason. Then that whole part right at the beginning is well acted. It falls apart when the battle actually begins. And that's not necessarily the movie's fault. I mean, Ian McDiarmid is not a young fellow. And I think I remember in one of the behind-the-scenes thing, you hear George saying, we don't need to change Ian around the fight. We need to change the fight around Ian. And you can tell from some of the shots that the fight scene was originally envisioned different. 'Cause there's actually one shot where it looks like Ian McDiarmid is holding a Graflex hilt. So you wonder if there was an original version of that fight scene where Anakin showed up earlier and Dooku ended up grabbing his saber and fighting with it some because he had lost his. Because there is a shot when he's backing up and he's like this, and the saber in his hand is not his saber. It is a Graflex. Go watch the movie. You can see the bunny ears. So you can tell that perhaps originally they had a different fight in mind when they were originally shooting it. And the fight does look a little clunky because of things. You know, when him and Mace are fighting, there are a lot of shots where you're kind of like, that looks bad. Although the looks on Mace's and Sidious's face, that's well acted. But the actual fight scene itself, especially with some of the background CGI'd in, looks clunky. Put it at that. I do think once, Mace had him kind of at his mercy, again, it kicks back in. It's a good scene. No, you will die. McDiarmid sells that. It's cool to see how the Emperor gets all messed up. Although I still like the theory of just they slowly get corrupting from using the dark side better, like in Knights of the Old Republic. But it's cool to see the special effect of that when he's getting all burned up. That's well done. I feel bad for Mace because he has no idea Anakin might betray him, so he's not thinking to be ready for it. I just think that scene is well done. And then it's really hit or miss, though, with Palpatine once he's talking to Anakin, because there's some parts where he's like, this Force is strong with you, and I'm cringing. Then there's other parts where he's like, once more, the Sith shall rule the galaxy, and I'm like, God, he's awesome. And I almost think those were shot on different days. One, because the makeup looks a little different once he puts the hood on. Like maybe they're using slightly different makeup to accentuate different things. But I don't know. It just seemed like Ian was just on it one day and not quite so on it the next. So part of that works and part of that doesn't. Let's see. The fight with Grievous, I'm fine with. I don't have any problems with it. Although I wish they'd left the scene from the book in. In the movie when he's like, I've been trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku. There's actually a line in the book where Obi-Wan goes, that's funny. I trained the man who killed him. And I love that, and I wish they'd left it in the movie. But I enjoy that fight. It's fine. I like Grievous. He doesn't overly impress me much because I don't really watch a lot of Clone Wars. And I just don't think he's utilized as well as I would have liked. I wish they'd introduced him maybe in episode 2. But I do like that fight scene. It's cool. It's nice to see him using 4 sabers and stuff. The Jedi Temple scene is alright. I just wish we'd gotten more of it. You really only get that one overarching shot where you see the Jedi and the Temple fighting and getting slaughtered before it switches to showing the Jedi on different planets getting executed, like Plo Koon and Kaya Mundi or whatever his name is, getting destroyed. That part's cool when you're seeing all the Jedi across the galaxy getting killed. I wish we'd seen a couple more of them. But again, I think that's down to time. This movie has a lot it has to do, and I'm sure they would have liked to have stretched it out a little more and showed a little bit more of that. One, it's having to keep that PG-13 rating, which for a Star Wars movie, just to have a PG-13 rating in the first place is a little heavy. But they still had to kind of watch what they could do, what they couldn't. And again, you're pressed for time. So I get it. And it's still effective. I just wish we'd seen more of the fighting in the temple. I would have enjoyed that. Really skipping along after that until about the end of the movie. I think the showdown between Anakin and Obi-Wan is really neat. I think both of the actors there are really on top. I have one issue right at the beginning of the battle, and that I don't like that Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber first. I just don't like that. For some reason, that bothers me. So other people have pointed out, if you look at the original trilogy, it's usually the one that's gonna lose or is arrogant that cuts on their lightsaber first in the original trilogy. Even Luke in Empire activates his before Vader, and he loses. Usually the one that's gonna win cuts it on second in the original trilogy. Just here, I don't know. It just would have made more sense. It's hard for me to believe Anakin would have completely given up and not tried to reason with him more. Excuse me, Obi-Wan. I figured Obi-Wan would have tried to reason with him more here instead of just cutting it on first. And I don't know why, but that is a nitpick with me that bothers me. Their actual battle is all right. It has moved into that part where I think it's a little more choreographed, like a dance. But also, this is two Jedi in their prime dueling it out. They probably can move that fast. Keep in mind, these are fully trained Jedi, not, a half man, half robot versus, a Luke Skywalker that's never been fully trained by a full complement of Jedi. These guys are in their prime with a lot on the line for each of them, fighting at their hardest. So they probably could move that fast. I like this fight, but as other people have pointed out in other reviews, I think it stretches on too long. I think even Jeremy Johns in his review mentions once they get outside with the lava and the shield goes down, that's kind of where it needed to stop. And I think I agree. I think I'm with him on that one. I think it starts getting a little long right there when the lava falls on the thing and it melts and falls down into the pit. I think that's about where it should have cut off, or right around where it should have cut off. But the beginning part of it is really good. John Williams' music right here, A Hero Falls, is phenomenal. He always does such good music. And that really accentuates the action going on. And while we're having that, it's intercutting with Yoda fighting Sidious. And I love that scene as well. I love when Yoda first walks in and just knocks the guards out. He just boom, boom. I love. Every time I watch the movie and I see that, I immediately rewind it and watch that part a second time because it makes me laugh so hard. Boom. All right, they're down. You survived. Surprised? That whole exchange is fun. And I like their battle too. And I love that little thing the Emperor has when the saber just comes out of his sleeve. I love that. I love in that scene when the Emperor just starts throwing the Senate stuff at him and he's just cackling about it like he's having a good time. Because I've always been impressed by the Senate room. I think that was really impressive CGI, even today, but especially for its time. And so I've always thought it looked neat. So naturally, just to see the Emperor gleefully chucking stuff at him. Oh, that's great. I kind of don't like how the Anakin Obi-Wan thing plays out with the whole high ground. One chop takes off his arm and his legs. I think I would have liked to have seen that play out a little better. Just one swing, he took out all 3 limbs. He took out every limb except the robotic one. I don't know. To me, it was a little anticlimactic. But I love, when they're talking at the end, right? When Anakin's trying not to fall into the lava and Obi-Wan's just talking to him, that little exchange is done really well. I like that we see Obi-Wan pick up Anakin's lightsaber to take it with him. And then actually seeing Vader burning up, something that we've all known. We've all known since the original trilogy, Vader got messed up, like really messed up. But just to actually see it that first time in theater, that's harrowing. That looks painful. And when you realize that his clothes melted onto his flesh, so later when he's getting his new suit and they're having to cut his clothes off of him because they're melted onto his. Ooh. Harrowing and painful. And to see him all burn up like that, that's an effective piece of cinema. I do think the Padme dying of a broken heart thing is really stupid. Just really. And I think it insults women in general, because women are just as tough as men are. They are, easily. And to think that, I can't live without him. And I think that's an insult to Padme's character. Padme is a very strong woman. She doesn't have to have a man to survive. And I get being upset over something happening to the love of her life. And I'm sure him turning like that evil is even worse to her than him dying. But she's too strong of a character to have just given up the will to live, especially when she has 2 newborn children that need taken care of. I don't agree with that. One, again, I think it's an insult to women in general, because women don't need a man to take care of them. They don't. And so I find that a bit insulting to them. And then I think that's an insult to Padme directly, because she's too strong of a character to need that. So that's my other big gripe, I guess, besides the quick turn, is just I don't like how they did Padme. And to me, that's always been the implication, is that she just kind of lost the will to live. And I think that's just an insult to her character. And I don't like that. And Natalie Portman deserved better, and Padme deserved better, in my opinion. I do like the scene when we see Vader getting into the costume. That's really well shot, and the inevitability of it is palpable. And when they put on the mask and you hear that first breath for the first time, and you kind of get that sense of the circle is now complete, and that it is a closed circle, and we've gotten to that point. And so seeing everything play out with everybody ending up where they're supposed to be, Leia on Alderaan, Vader with the Emperor watching the Death Star being built, and then Luke being taken to his new, his aunt and his uncle, while Obi-Wan walks off toward his little pack mule thing where he's going in, to stay on Tatooine to watch over Luke. Everything being set up where it has to be. Because that's the thing about Revenge of the Sith, is it is closing a circle. It's getting everything to where it has to be. Because even going into the movie, we know basically how it has to end, because since it is... Episode 3 is the... How to phrase this? The end of the beginning of the middle. Because it's really right there at the middle of the story, because it's going into episode 4. So 3 and 4 are really the middle of a 6-story saga. At least originally. And so it's the end of the beginning of the middle. That's how I put it. And we know it has to be here for everything to set up for episode 4. So we know everything's going to end up here, is seeing how it gets to there. So seeing everything at the end of 3 being where we know it has to be works really well. But I love this movie. I do. I just... It's fun. I don't have to fast forward through anything. It's well paced. There's always something going on. This movie's always going like this. It's always giving you more without feeling bloated or crowded like Rise of Skywalker does. It's a really good movie. I really enjoy it. And I'm not going to say it's the best Star Wars movie ever made. I am going to say it's my favorite Star Wars movie ever made. Anyway, I'm Probable1701. Click the like button. Click the subscribe button. Don't forget to check out my other channel, Another Sci-Fi Guy, where I rank nice Doctor Who stuff, like this excellent Tom Baker set, because I love me some Tom Baker. And most importantly, thank you for watching.